Arandaspis is a genus of jawless fish from the Ordovician period and one of the oldest known true vertebrates. The evolution of internal skeleton made it both fast and agile, although it was still an underdog in the ecosystem dominated by large invertebrate predators. It was a small animal only growing about 12 to 13 centimeters, 5 to 6 inches long, and was thus dwarfed by almost all other animals in its habitat. Like the large cephalopod Chamaerosaurus, Arataspis could swim by beating its tail but lacked stabilizing fins on its body for controlled movement. The tail may have consisted of a simple dorsal and versatile webs based on studies of its close relatives. Its body was covered in a row of armor scutes and hard plates, which protected the front of its body and head, with openings for eyes, nostrils, and gills. Due to its lack of jaws, the fish would have been graced with the look of prominent surprises. It, as it only possessed small slit at the front of its head for filter feeding, with the color of the fish is unknown, but it was depicted in the series as yellowish green to blend in with the surroundings, coral and sponges. Fish at the time had lines of sensory pits along their bodies, which were used to detect pressures changes in the water. It is possible that the Arandaspis also had these same adaptations. Arandaspis remains were discovered in the Sturraway sandstone of the Amadis Basin near Alice Spring, Australia. The region was once a shallow marine habitat. In Gondwana, home to many other species of jawless fish, Eridaspis was featured in the series living in tropical coral reefs populated by numerous trilobites and cephalopods. The reefs were located in shallow waters and it was predominantly inhabited by invertebrates like corals, sea urchins, sponges, and anemones, while primitive vertebrates like Eridaspis seem to have been relatively rare due to being in the early stages of their evolution. As one of the earliest vertebrates in history of life on our planet, Eridaspis does not appear to have complex behavior. They were shown to as opportunistic scavengers using their nimble bodies to dart in and consume scraps of meat from larger hunters like Chamaerosaurus. Eridaspis was shown to be quite inquisitive, showing little fear for large cephalopods, and swimming in very close proximity to it. Although they were easily deterred once it swung its tentacle at the scavengers. It It seems that Erandaspis lived in dense places between rocks and sponges like modern reef fish for maximum protection against predators. Reef fish today confine themselves to one small neighborhood where even every hiding place is known and can be immediately accessed. So it is possible that Eratosthenes did the same thing. Eratosthenes is only from Australia, where Chemoceras fossils have not been found. However, there is another relative. The Endoceras is known from Australia, implying that the series has synonymized the two genera as Chemoceras. The coral reef where the Ordovician animals were featured in was chosen at Saint Lucia, a location chosen due to its prevalence of sea sponges. In every shot, too, had to have its coral reef fish painted out since they hadn't evolved yet during the Ordovician. And it is also mentioned by the film that Eratosthenes survived the late Ordovician mass extinction due to its small body, but that is false because it died out 25 million years before the extinction even began. Archosaurus is a genus of ornithosaurid theropod dinosaur from the early Cretaceous. Orthomimosaurs are also known as the ostrich dinosaurs due to their coating of feathers and long legs that allowed them to run at speeds of over 48 kilometers per hour or 30 miles per hour on flat ground. Archosaurus was one of the first of these omnivores, and, and the name suggests that this one was named after the state Arkansas. As one of the basal members of the group, Archosaurus was a relatively medium-sized animal that grew to size at around 4.6 meters, 15 feet long, and 38 and 380 kilograms, 838 pounds in weight, around the size of an ostrich. It was comparable in size to later members of the Ornithomimosauria, such as Struthiomimus and Ornithomimus. Although it was much smaller than the largest dinosaur group, Dinochirus, the later Ornithomimosaurs were relatively toothless, but Archosaurus may have retained teeth like other early members of the lineage, whose foot bones are it most resembles. It was depicted with an ostrich-like toothless beak that was used to crop vegetation, although it may have had an omnivorous diet and also consumed small animals and insects like other ornithomimosaurs. Archosaurus had a long and slender neck with a small skull and relatively large eyes, as well as shaggy coating of feathers used for insulation. Evidence of feathering comes from the genus Ornithomimus and other species showing an ostrich-like plumage while running. It would have used its long, stiff tail as a counterbalance to prevent itself from stumbling while it ran. The skin of the dinosaur was shown as a cobalt blue. The feathers were grayish white, and the tail had a definitive fan on of feathers at the end of it. The fossils were discovered in the Trinity Group of rocks in the state of Arkansas. The individual featured in the show lived in semi-arid plain with rocky outcrops and spruce vegetation similar to the Bryce Canyon National Park in Utah. Geological evidence of the environment in which Deinonychus lived actually points to a floodplain or swampy like habitat, similar to the modern day Louisiana. As Arkansas coexisted alongside Deinonychus, the former may have inhabited the same environment as the latter instead of a rocky scrublands portrayed in the series. While no other dinosaurs have been named in the Trinity Formation in Arkansas, rocks of similar age in nearby formations show that Arkansas lived alongside other early Cretaceous dinosaurs like Acrocanthosaurus, Tenotosaurus, and another undescribed Titanosauriform sauropod, and a variety of fish, amphibians, and reptiles. Now, the Arkansas was shown to have behaved much like modern day ostriches, giving their superficial resemblance. They were cautious animals who were quick to spot danger and would have utilized their speed to outrun predators rather than stand their ground and fight. Although Arkansas was shown to as effective sprinter over rough terrain, it had lower stamina than that of other smaller Deinonychus and could not run for as long. The animal could still defend itself against smaller animals with kicks, although this would prove to be a last resort method of defense. Unusual green streak featured and found in Arkansas fossils indicate that the individual suffered from a gut as a juvenile, which may have produced a limp, but did not seem to be impacted its survival. Similar cases are known from tyrannosaurs, but these are the first recognition of gout in an ornithomimosaur. Arthropleura is a genus of large giant millipedes that lived in the coral forests of North America and Europe during the Carboniferous and the early Permian periods. It was the largest land invertebrate of all time, possibly because extremely high oxygen levels that occurred during the Carboniferous. Despite its intimidating size, is it is widely accepted to be an herbivore. length from 1.9 to 2.63 meters, 6 to 8 feet. Due to its immense size, it's, it dwarfed most of vertebrates it lived alongside. It would have had no natural predators or enemies. The traditional explanation for why Arthropleura and its contemporaries were able to grow to such large sizes is that of higher levels of atmospheric oxygen due during the Carboniferous enhanced animals' respiratory premanitory more powerful muscles active and the capacity to support a larger, heavier skeleton. However, this theory, this theory has several important counterpoints. One of one of them being that large size arthropod skeletons are found from and another fact that the most carnivorous and Permian arthropod species were not gigantic, and it hasn't been demonstrated that they were, on average, generally larger than at other times in history. Higher oxygen levels are not also not essential for large terrestrial arthropods. An example being the modern, strongly terrestrial coconut crabs, because some arthropods don't need oxygen to grow large. Although the mouth part of Arthropleura has not been found, it is generally accepted as a herbivore upon the spores and seeds in its vegetation filled habitat. Arthropleura was covered in tough exoskeleton which it may have molted from time to time throughout its life. The most complete fossils of this millipede are thought to have been 38 segments, sorry, 32 segments, but it is not clear whether the animal had 2 legs prior per segment. The total of 64 legs, or for every 2 segments, total of 32 legs. At the time of production, the head of the animal was unknown, so based on discoveries of related millipedes, Arthropleura was reconstructed, had trumpet-like organs, and a pair of non-flammatories attempts to sense its surroundings. With most millipedes have lateral compound eyes, which only provide them with basic vision, so limited that most are only able to grange relative levels of light and darkness. Due to this fact, it is reasonable that to infer that Arthropleura was virtually blind. Our recent discovery provide new insight into the head anatomy of Arthropleura. Micro CT scans of new fossils from France revealed never before seen details about its anatomy. Arthropleura, in fact, had stalk eyes like those of crabs, contrast, contrasting with previous assumptions that it had a head more like modern millipedes with sessoletto eyes. These eyes could point towards a semi-aquatic lifestyle, which has been observed from Euthycarcinoid. Arthropods that lived alongside. The mouth parts of Arthropoda are practically centipede-like. They were fully encapsulable within the head and would have proved useful for grinding leaves and bark. Other appendages are more millipede-like, notably a pair of antennae with seven article that at the front of its head. For their habitat, fossils are known from both North America and Europe, and fossil footprints from the millipedes would have been found at the Isle of Arran in Scotland. It was an inhabited of Carboniferous coral forests. The fossilized remains of which turn into the fossil fuel that we burn today in the present. However, Arthropura also lived in forest independent life as a fossil would have been found in more open areas and even after the Carboniferous rainforest collapse. With oxygen levels so high in the Carboniferous, the giant millipede lived alongside other gargantuan invertebrates, including giant giant dragonfly distant relative Meganeura and Pulmonoscorpius. The coral forests were most prominent inland, its habitat at this time consisting of low-lying, swampy areas with rivers flowing from higher, drier land. Common plant not only include ferns, also tree-like horsetails and calamites and lycopodium trees. And for their behavior, they were shown to behave like modern day millipedes, navigating around its habitat with touch and scent rather than by sight. Males may have used courtship behavior to attract females in ways similar to modern millipedes today, such as rubbing together parts of their shell to create strange chittering sound as a type of song. They mate by locking their bodies together in this upright manner. The female Arthropleura was depicted curling up into a ball, something that may have not been possible considering how rigid and flat the exoskeleton was. Careful observation of fossils indicate that millipede would roam about exposed environments and retreat to live to leave a forests during the wet season. And there are other animals that have not been named, but reused models from other episodes. For this pterosaur, shown at chapter 6, it may represent Quetzalcoatlus, a single neck bone discovered in Hell Creek has been attributed to be possibly as Darkid. Chamaesaurus is a genus of orthoconic nautiloid from the Ordovician period, abundant in seas worldwide until the early Silurian. It was the large apex predator and an early member of the cephalopod class that preyed upon most of the animals in its habitat. Although successful for millions of years and growing to immense sizes, the large nautiloids were hit particularly hard by the late Ordovician mass extinction and never recovered. Chamaesaurus had a long straight shell consisting of several chambers, the largest of which held the animal itself. These chambers were filled with gas, and by adjusting the levels, they could change their buoyancy by either floating upwards or sinking deeper. Like other cephalopods, its primary weapons were its prehensile tentacles used to grasp and manipulate creatures like trilobites, while using a hard parrot-like beak and radula to crush shells and rasp out soft tissue from within them. In the past, it was thought that the orthocones swam horizontally like squid and cuttlefish. Now, studies in 3D printed replicas have shown that they likely lived a vertically oriented lifestyle. To swim, orthocones, sorry, Chamaesaurus used jaw propulsion. It expelled water out of the organ called hypnomore to propel itself through the ocean. As the shell is only part of the Chamaesaurus that can fossilize and fences that most be drawn from modern cephalopods and close fossil relatives to give an idea of what the animal looked like. Trace fossils from the nautiloid Pteroptoceras indicate that they have 10 arms of roughly equal length. There are also evidence that they had flat and overall shape auriculum on the top of the head as the nautilus is. Chamaesaurus is depicted in the show with red octopus-like color and a set of stripes running down the length of their shells. Some individuals have algae covering their bodies, perhaps showing their age compared to others. Chamaesaurus fossils are known from continents of North America, Europe, Asia. During the Ordovician, these land masses made up of island continents. like the Bolta, like the Bolka and Siberia, respectively. The orthocone would have lived in shallow, tropical seas in around the paleocontinent, presumably around rocky coral and sponge reefs. Reefs at this time were Eden of productively marine life, including sponges, sea urchins, corals, anemones, gastropods, clams, and many others. Calmaceres lived alongside a diverse variety of trilobites, jawless fish like primitive Aridaspidid and Eupterids, sea scorpions like Megalograptus. All of them may have fallen prey to this giant carnivore. It was portrayed as a crafty, somewhat intelligent hunter, like its modern relative, the octopus. They use their tentacles to ensnare prey and reach into tightest areas to catch them off guard. The cephalopods would have largely ignored them, ignore more swifter animals, such as Aridaspis, due to how difficult they were to catch and willingly allow the fish to feed on their leftovers without much concern. Camaceres was also featured swimming in groups, although it is only speculative behavior. Modern, modern nautiloids like the chamber nautilus are not wholly solitary animals and spend much of their time alone. There is direct evidence for nautiloid predation on trilobites. A bite mark on the trilobite in particular from the late Ordovician and Lindsay Formation in Ontario matches the shape of the cephalopod beak. Camaceres is also known from Lindsay Formation, Lindsay. Sorry for mispronouncing it. I apologize. And is the most likely culprit for the attack, which killed the trilobite before it could molt again. Here are inaccuracies and errors. Like 1. Camasaurus was mentioned to have been 8 meters, 26.2 feet long in this series. However, this is outdated size estimate, and it is now generally accepted that the animal could grow the length of around 2 meters, 6.6 feet. The largest orthocone fossils have recently been attributed to the genus Endoceras, which is very similar to Camaceres in almost all anatomical aspects. Erandaspis is known only from Australia, where Camaceres fossils have not been found. However, the similar Endoceras is known from Australia, implying that the series has synonymized the two genera as Camaceres. There is an unconfirmed reports of a destroyed Endoceras shell that was 9.1 meters, 30 feet in length, possibly explaining the Camaceres' size in the show. And Camasaurus is depicted having camera-type eyes, like those of cuttlefish, but they were likely more similar to other nautiloids with pinhole-type eyes without the lens. This scorpion, well, is never named, but it is presumably Gigantoscorpio. cave lion, Pantherus spelaea, is a genus of big cat that diverged from the closely related African lion between 1.9 million to 6 600,000 years ago during the Pleistocene epoch, up to 12% larger than any modern day lion. It was a widespread predator throughout North America and Eurasia during the last ice age and died out only 13 million years ago, shortly after the shortly before the Holocene epoch. The cave lion lived alongside humans, who depicted the predator in the cave and Ice Age cave paintings from Paleolithic art discovered in France. It is generally accepted that the male lions completely lack manes, or at most had very small ones. Cave lions shared the same basic body plan as African lion, but exhibit minor differences, such as longer and narrow muzzle. Pantherus spelaea was one of the largest big cat ever to have evolved. Fossil skeletons reveal that males were about 1.2 meters, 3 feet 11 inches at the shoulder, had a length at and could weigh at hefty 339 kilograms, 747 pounds at maximum. And for their coat, from caveline hair samples and mummified caveline cubs that have been discovered, we know that the color of the fur was similar to modern lions, but slightly lighter. In addition, the animal possessed a thick and dense undercoat of comprised yellowish to white, wavy downy hair, and a smaller mass of darker guard hairs. These adaptations, along with smaller ears, allow it to survive in a frigid Ice Age world. In the series, the coat of the lion has been restored as white. Cave lions was a common predator in the mammoth steppe, a huge expanse of polar grassland that stretched from Eurasia to North America during the last glacial period. It was a keystone species in this environment and lived alongside other predators like cave hyenas, short-faced bears, as well as gray wolves and brown bears that still survive to the present day. Cave lions also coexist with modern humans by around 41,000 years ago and may have competed against them for food. There is direct evidence of both Neanderthals and Homo sapiens hunting cave lions for their pelts, and the former may have even revealed them as vulgaring trophies of the animals. Besides tundra steppes, cave lions are found in a variety of environments, including temperate forests, mixed woodlands, and floodplains. Pantherus spelaea most commonly preyed on cave bear cubs and reindeer, the latter which made up a bulk of its diet. Due to climate change and the extinction of many large megafauna at the end of the Pleistocene, the tundra steppe sharply declined after the ice ages. Ended. Environmental changes, disappearance of prey, and human impact may have also contributed to the lion's demise. And for their errors and speculation, cave lions did not have premeditated white fur from evidence in form of their hair sample and mummified cub specimens. They had light brownish and yellowish color. In the episode, cave lions are depicted forming a wall with their bodies to block the path of mammoths. However, this is ineffective. A hunting strategy, especially considering the size differences between the two animals. It is more likely that cave lions hunted like modern carnivores, inducing panic into their prey and chasing after it, or surrounding to break it up with herd to expose the smaller and easier target. And a singular cave lion is featured taking down a teenage mammoth single-handedly with little resistance from the latter. In general sense, this is unrealistic hunting scene that would have not taken place in life. And for this beetle that appeared in chapter 5 in the Cretaceous Badlands that lived alongside Deinonychus, it does not specify what its name is. And this ratite, it's not given a name. However, ratites are not known from the beginning of the Paleocene epoch. Several chicks of the species can be seen during the aftermath of the Kibuchi extinction, hatching from a nest of eggs in the ash fields. And this mammal, in chapter 5, in the location segment of the two Monsoon Formation where Myosaurus lived, it is this mammal is likely Similocoix. Sorry for mispronouncing it. Cimexomys. Deinonychus. Well, looks accurate for the most part, the feathering and the structure. But there are some problems. It is depicted in the series as a pack hunter, although this behavior is heavily disputed. A 2007 study on Deinonychus tooth isotopes has indicated that the dinosaur lack complex cooperate social behavior that is found in mammals like wolves. And I know what you're gonna say. What about the relatives like the Harris hawk? They hunted in packs. That is very different. However, track sites with similar foot spacing the parallel trackway, implying that the pack behavior is possible. The anatomy of most dromaeosaurids points at ambush predation rather than pursue hunting, which also means that Deinonychus was unable to outrun Archosaurus in the chase on flat ground. So, they are not adapted for long pursued prey. Fossils of multiple Deinonychus near herbivore Tyrannosaurus indicating that the predator hunted in groups, but based on behavior of modern Archosaurs and Komodo dragons. In this situation where a group of Komodo dragons are eating together, the largest individual eat first and will attack smaller ones that attempt to feed. If a smaller animal is killed, it is cannibalized. It is more likely that they were a solitary animal, all drawn to the same kill. In addition, Donika's skeletal remains found at these sites have missing parts, probably having been eaten by other Donicas. Overall, the often critiqued evidence disproving and supporting pack hunting and Donicus are both questionable. And the species portrayed in living in semi-arid plains with rocky outcrops and spruce vegetation. Where was geographical evidence that actually suggests it lived in a floodplain like swamp environment habitat, similar to the Louisiana and it's shown to pronate their arms, which they could not. If they try this, they will break their wrists. And and there's one thing, the skull shape of Donicus is outdated, being shorter how it was in reality, and tapering towards the end. Diplodocus, Doedicurus, and this unknown dromaeosaurid in the background, possibly Archaeoraptor and Edmontosaurus. But there is something about it. Its depiction showed the crest on its head from Edmontosaurus regalis, but E. regalis died out before 66 million years ago. The only possible species it lived at the end of the Cretaceous is Edmontosaurus innectens, lived during the end of the Maastrichtian. However, Edmontosaurus innectens is not known to have a head crest and also had longer skull than it was featured in the episode. And Edmontosaurus regalis did not live from the end of the dinosaurs. Why did they choose E. regalis instead of E. innectens? Well, we don't know why they choose this one. Erythrosuchus, Gonaagmania. And if you look at the sauropods that lived alongside Triceratops, what is now Hell Creek. And here's the problem. Allosaurus did not live in Hell Creek. They're restricted in the southern region. I mean, seriously. Here's a question. Why did he always put Allosaurus in Hell Creek for some reason? Why? Why did they always do that? I mean, in Saurian, they had a concept art for Allosaurus in Hell Creek, but and if you look at the background, it looked like a diplodocid that lived alongside Triceratops. But here's the problem. The diplodocid or Diplodocines lived only lived in the late Jurassic to the early Cretaceous, 155 to 136.4 million years ago, meaning that Diplodocids were only lived in the early Cretaceous, so there is no evidence that they could reach to the late Cretaceous. And the ornithomimosaurs drinking the water reused models from Archosaurus. The ones here most likely are either Struthiomimus or Ornithomimus. And this lizard, and this doesn't specify what name it is. And this mammal doesn't specify what name it is. And the one here shown in chapter 5. Well, it is possibly Dakotaraptor. However, it could be a potentially chimeric animal, with fossil remains being attributed by other animals like turtles, Oviraptorosaurs, and Ornithomimids. Whether it's a chimeric or if it's its own thing. Inostrancevia and the dung beetle and the sugar glider animal, Lystrosaurus and Myocetus, Myosaura, Megacerops, Olidoids, and Otodus obliquus. This snake, and this trilobite, and the Ordovician, and Phorusrhacus. Plateosaurus, Pliosaurus falconi, or its nickname Predator X, Pterodactylus, and this animal, it is likely Rheosaurus. Despite its appearance, it is a polycotylid. Well, a polycotylid is a group of family of plesiosaurs from the Cretaceous, from 113 to 72 million years ago. For this one, it doesn't specify what it belongs to, because the fossils of this animal is only known from a partial rostrum with teeth. Some say it's a type of crocodiliomorph, a plesiosaur, or the last surviving polycotylid from the Maastrichtian stage of Jordan. Mamenchisaurus, Scutosaurus, Sinraptor, unknown species of pterosaur, Smilodon gracilis, Smilodon poplitear, Sonophia, T-Rex. It is shown that two juveniles are hunting Triceratops, which are evidence of a specimen dueling dinosaurs with a juvenile T-Rex and a Triceratops, all that died at the same time and together, meaning that juvenile T-Rex could hunt an adult Triceratops, but it's very risky that they will risk injury or worse, death from an angry Triceratops. And T-Rex itself looks angry for the most part, but except the osteoderms on its back. And in the scene it is shown roaring using Jurassic Park Rex, but only using the growling and bellow from the JP Rex. In reality, they would make rumbling, bellow, hissing, and growling sounds. The Osodon and Titanus. There are some inaccuracies. Like, Smilodon gracilis was much smaller than Titanus, the latter of which was over twice as heavy and tall as the saber-toothed cat. Due to this, it is highly unlikely that Smilodon preyed upon the terror bird. The larger species of Smilodon that probably would have been capable of taking on Titanus, such as Smilodon poplitear, didn't evolve until after Titanus died out. And Smilodon and other carnivorous mammals did not drive the terror birds to extinction, as was mentioned by the narration. South American terror birds like Phorusrhacus had already died out before the American continents collide, and Titanus was the only genus to make the trip up to North America. Titanus successfully coexisted with many mammalian predators for millions of years, and it is likely that it died out due to climate change. A 2016 study remarked that this transition from woodland habitats around 1.8 million years ago to more open habitats and resulted prey switch in S. gracilis after the point in time when the forest-dwelling Titanus went extinct. S. gracilis was also significantly larger after the switch, which is something that doesn't happen to predators unless they are relived of top-down competitive pressure from carnivores of higher trophic level. The environment of Titanus is inaccurate. It is shown to live in open like plains and around freshwater lakes. In reality, they inhabited closed woodland areas. And a brief scene fighting between two young male Titanus shown looking at the back of the male moving its eyeball to do so rather than turning its head, nearly looking behind it. In most bird species, bird irises are fixed in places with limited movement, 10 to 20 degrees at the base of their eyes, aren't able to turn that far when the head is stationary. And for their sound, it is shown to be roaring, which is inaccurate. Like terror birds, they would have made deep vocalization like bustards and cassowaries. Triceratops. There were some problems with it. The model showed that is a reused model from Jurassic World. The creators of the series have openly admitted to using models from Jurassic Park franchise and editing them to make them more accurate. Really? You just have to make the model from a JP/JW Triceratops. Don't they ever watch Prehistoric Planet Triceratops? And its head is undersized. And due to Triceratops' bulk, a large weight, and leg anatomy, is unlikely that it was able to gallop like like a rhinoceros, which adult could not gallop like a rhino. And it did not coexist with Alamosaurus, because they're because this sauropod is only known from southwest states. And it is shown in the first chapter it was running away from the T Rex, which is not realistic. They would stand their ground and fight back. And last but not least, the woolly mammoth. And that's it for life on our planet. And yes, I have seen the series, and it was 50-50. Yeah. A lot of inaccuracies and outdated and errors and speculative. Everything really. It's a 50-50 for me. And I'm sorry for the rush because I'm tired and trying to find a home in the apartment and everything. I'm doing fine. And again, I apologize for not uploading videos lately because I've been very stressed out. Anyways, like and subscribe and see you later, guys.